Hey, my Liptons. So I wanted to come in here and do. This not gonna be too much of a long video. Um, I wanted to give y'all like my review of the Roshans documentary on Netflix. So listen, so I watched this documentary like actually like 2 weeks ago or something. Like it was like 2 weeks ago. Because the documentary actually came out, if I'm not mistaken, it came out earlier this year, if I'm not mistaken. I don't remember. But like I did see like a trailer of it a few months ago. And I was like, okay, they're doing a documentary, like the same way how they did it for Yash Chopra. I also know they did a documentary for not Netflix, but I think Amazon Prime did a documentary on Salim Javed. I didn't watch that one. And maybe not. I'll be interested to watch it, but I haven't watched it yet. But I don't know, like at first, like I wasn't really too keen on watching this Roshans documentary. But then I was just like, I kept thinking about it. I'm like, you know what? I grew up on hrithikroshan. I know a little bit about Rakesh Roshan, and I don't know. I actually did not know anything about Rakesh Roshan. Okay, nor about like the grandfather of the patch. So to me, like I was just basically like, okay, like let me just go into the doc because one, I don't know anything about it. So it's like let me just go into this like as someone that's clearly unknown about like the family history. Like I know a little bit. Like I do remember um the Simi Garwal interviews. Like I watched the Hritik Roshan part. I didn't really completely fully watch the Rakesh Roshan part, but like I know a little bit about Rakesh Roshan and his history in the Hindi film industry. And obviously, if y'all don't know, Rakesh Roshan is Hritik Roshan's father, and Rakesh Roshan is Hritik Roshan's uncle. And of course, like just going to, y'all already know. Yeah, I said this multiple times on this channel. The Hindi film industry is like there are dynasties in that industry. Okay, you literally have the Roshans, the Khans, the Mukherjees, the Kapoors. Like there are whole dynasties in the Hindi film industry, in the in all the industries within India. So there's a lot of that. There's of course, yes, yes, people gonna be like, oh my god, nepotism. Yes, there is nepotism. Yes, the nepotism goes hard over there in the Hindi film industry. But here's my thing. I do have a little bit of issues with the documentary. I can't lie. I did like some parts, but then there was other parts where it's like I'm glad that I learned a few things, but then there was other things that I felt like the documentary left out, especially when it got to like the part about Hitler, because Hitler was like the part four. What was it, part four? Because it was 4 episodes, I think. Because it was about the first episode was about the grandfather Roshan, which by the way, I had absolutely no idea that Roshan is not actually technically their real the Roshan's real last name. Their actual last name is Nagraf, if I'm not mistaken. But like the documentary didn't really get into detail as to why they changed their last name from Nagrath to Roshan, because the grandfather of and the father of Rakesh and Ragesh, their father's name was Roshan. So his first name was Roshan Lal Nagrith, and then for some reason, I guess when it got to like when Rakesh and Ragesh were born, they just changed the name. So it's things like that where it's like I wish that they could have got into a little bit more detail about like why. It's like they mentioned it and then it's like they skipped over. It's like they moved on. It's like, yeah, like, oh, our last name was initially Nagarath, but then yeah, it was just changed to Roshan. And I'm like, was that due to because like maybe Roshan was more commercially pleasing, like in for like the film industry and that sort of thing? I don't know. Like that's just what I was thinking. But like the first episode was about the grandfather, the patriarch of the family at the time, Roshan Lal Nagrith, who was the music director back in like the I'm talking about like back in like the 40s, the 50s, like back in that day, he was the music director. He was doing a lot of soundtracks for the Hindi films that were being released. He worked with like Raj Kapoor. He worked with a lot of people. He did some hit songs, but he died. He actually died pretty early. If I'm gonna be honest, like he died at 50 years old. So he died pretty young. And then Ragesh Roshan, who's on right here on the right side, end up kind of taking the reins and, following in his father's footsteps when it comes to music and music directing. And I'm gonna be honest with y'all, there, like, because I don't know too much about Rakesh Roshan like that, but like that Julie, cause that's my first time ever being introduced to the film Julie of 1975, where he produced what's the song called? Hold on, give me a second. Where it's like, Julie, I love you. That's my song. I love that song. Yeah, Bol Gaya Sab Kuch. Yeah. Bol Gaya Sab Kuch. Listen, yeah, if y'all want to hear some good old is gold Hindi soundtracks, y'all need to go listen to that Julie 1975 Bollywood soundtrack, okay? Those songs were eating. Okay, the songs now ain't got nothing on what it was back then. But, Rakesh Roshan also wrote some hits for the Hindi film industry. But here's another thing, too, that I had an issue with the documentary. They didn't really touch, because I had to look this up, because someone in the comments were saying how, like, in the documentary, they didn't discuss how Rakesh Roshan apparently was accused of, like, plagiarism when it comes to like his music that he was producing for these films. There were many times where he was accused of plagiarism. So I don't know. It's like those are things that like they didn't touch on, and it's just like, if this is a documentary, y'all talking about the good, the bad, and the ugly, then y'all should also talk about those things too, the things that didn't make y'all look good. And it's like, of course, like they touched on the fact that Rakesh Roshan was like, a drinker, he didn't want to get married at first, and, da-da-da-da. Like, they even kind of touched upon, like, the fact that, like, when he first got married to his wife, like, his wife had a hard time in the family, but, like, they didn't get into too much detail. And I'm like, yo, like, talk about these things. Like, if it's a doc, then talk about, like, listen, to me, and someone said this in the comment section, if y'all are just going to give us the good, or, like, a little bit sprinkles of, like, some of the hardships, then quite frankly, there's more of like a PR kind of thing for the family, because it's just like, what's the point of y'all doing this documentary if y'all not going to talk about all the controversies, everything that came with this dynasty, So that's just how I felt when it came to that, because I had no clue that Rakesh Roshan was accused of plagiarism. I had absolutely no clue until I had to look that up. But yeah, he was accused of that quite a bit, like for a few years too. Like I think they said here that he was accused back in 2000 of plagiarism, 2008. So he had a few times where he was accused of these kinds of things. And then that was the second episode. And then the third episode was about Rakesh Roshan, who is the father of hrithikroshan. And Rakesh Roshan, like I said, I already knew about him, a little bit about him, because of the Simi Garwal interviews. And like, I will honestly say, like, if anything, I feel like they kind of touched on him, like, as far as like what he went through a little bit harder than compared to like Hrithik or Rakesh, because Rakesh Roshan was like in the film industry. Of course, he wanted to become an actor at first. At first, he was kind of having like a little bit of success, but then he was just flopping. The Hindi film industry wasn't accepting him as an actor. He wasn't succeeding as an actor. So like, and then he transitioned into being a director, and really him being a director, when I tell you it benefited Rakesh Roshan heavily, it benefited him heavily. Like, we're talking about Rakesh Roshan directed like some of the greatest, like, of course, Kahona Pyar Hai, Karan Arjun, Kola, Koi Mil Gaya, Krish 1, Krish 2, of course, Krish 3. These are hits, y'all. Like, these are hits that, that came out of Rakesh Roshan. Like, there were definitely, he gave us a lot of hits. Like, Rakesh Roshan, and, he doesn't really get, I mean, maybe he does, but, like, he's really gonna go down into being, like, one of the greatest directors. Like, definitely top 10 greatest directors in Hindi film industry ever, if I'm gonna be honest with you. Like, he really put in a lot of work, right? So they touched on that in episode 3. And then in episode 4 is where I was just like, okay, like what is going on? Because obviously I grew up on hrithikroshan. I love him down. He was always attractive to me. Like that's my guy. But it's just like I felt like when they got to episode 4, like it felt like a mixture. It felt like there were some parts they would talk about Hrithik, and then there were some parts they would talk about Rakesh. And I get it, like Rakesh obviously has a huge influence on Hrithik because 1, that's his father. 2, he directed a good amount of his son's hits. So it's like, I get it. But it's just like, there were times where it's like, I feel like they didn't touch on the fact that like, what about Hrithik's other hits apart from him being, apart from his father being director? What about Kabhi Khushi Kabhie Gham? You know, what about Jodha Akbar? Like, I feel like they were going to touch on those things too. Like, what are the films? You know, Fizza. Like, what other films? Even though mind you, oh my God, this is the part that killed me. They had Sanjay Leela Bhansali in this documentary talking, you know, saying how great the Roshans are and things like that. And I'm like, oh, okay. So I was thinking to myself, oh, when we get to like Hrithik's part of the documentary, that like Sanjay Leela Bhansali was going to talk about the fact that, oh, you know, what motivated him to cast Hrithik for Guzarish, and like why he thought that it would be a good, because Guzarish is such an underrated hit. It's such an not underrated hit, but like underrated film from like the Sanjay Leela Bhansali films, and like really like one of Hrithik Roshan's and Aishwarya Rai's best work. So like he didn't even touch on that, and the fact that like Guzarish is literally like a cult classic right now in 2025. So it's just like y'all had basically Hrithik was just like there to just like, hey, yeah, like me and my dad, like, you know, we had little, you know, we got into it a little bit here and there because his directing style and me being the actor, we clashed a little bit, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, I get it. But it's like, y'all could have also touched on the fact, also, and this is no shade, and I also have to bring this up. Why not also touch on some of Hrithik's controversies too? You know, the whole Kangana Raj, you know, that whole situation. Like, touch on little things. Touch on little things. Like, don't make it all gooey, hugs and kisses. Like, not everything was perfect. And of course, like, you know, they did talk about the fact that, you know, how Rakesh Roshan got shot, you know, and everything. And how that had an impact on them. But even that, like, when we were discussing the shooting, like, it felt very, I don't know, like, it felt very quick. Like, even though, like, they were vulnerable in those scenes, but, like, it didn't feel like, well, why was he targeted exactly? Like, what was it? Jealousy? Like, what was going on at that time that Rakesh Roshan, that someone would come up? Of course, like, people are crazy, but, like, what was the motivation? And then they didn't discuss that at all in the documentary. So, to me, like, I was just like, okay, like, of course, like, in the last part, you know, they talked about Hrithik's dancing in Kahona. I feel like they focused too much on Kahona. Like, yes, I get it. Kahona Pyar Hai was the one that made Hrithik a star. It, you know, Rakesh Roshan was so happy. I get it. But it's like, Hrithik had other hits too. Like, they talked about Krish, of course, Koi Mil Gaya. But it's like, what about Kabhi Khushi Kabhie Gham? That whole dynamic. Why didn't they discuss how, and mind you, Karan Johar also was in this documentary. Why didn't Karan Johar, and he talked about it in his book, why didn't Karan Johar talk about how, you know, Hrithik Roshan low-key had a hard time on the set of Kabhi Khushi Kabhie Gham because Shah Rukh felt so... That's another thing too. Shah Rukh Khan was also in this documentary because Shah Rukh Khan also worked with Rakesh Roshan a lot as a director. So it's like, why didn't Shah Rukh discuss, oh, like, yeah, there was a little bit of tension there, or I felt a little bit of jealousy when Hrithik was coming up because, like, the media was pinning us against each other. Like, what, we could have had a little bit of drama. Like, give me something. Like, I just felt like this documentary was too much of a puff piece for the Roshans. Like, y'all need to put the things that actually happened. Like, yes, y'all only give us some of it, but y'all didn't put all of it in there, okay? It's like, I'm half full. So it's like, y'all didn't talk about Kabhi Khushi Kabhie Gham. Y'all didn't talk about Jodha Akbar. Why didn't y'all get Ashutosh Guz? Like, why didn't y'all get him there to talk about Jodha Akbar? Y'all had Sanjay Leela Bhansali in the documentary. Y'all didn't talk about Guzarish. So Karan Johar was in the documentary. Y'all didn't talk about Kabhi Khushi. So it's just like, I don't know. I just felt like they only focused on, and I get it, it's about the Roshan, so they're trying to make the focus about him. But I felt like we already had the part 1 about the grandfather, the part 2 about the uncle, the part 3 about the father. The last part should have been about the son. And I thought, and, oh my God, here's another thing that I'm thinking about too. They didn't, here's another thing that kind of like, I was just like, I wasn't understanding it. Why wasn't Suzanne Khan in this documentary? Could someone explain this to me? Why wasn't Suzanne Khan in this documentary? Last time I checked, Hrithik and Suzanne are cool with each other. Like, they're literally cool with each other. Why wasn't she in the... She literally was a huge influence and a huge part of Hrithik's rise. On top of that, doing Bollywood when he was at his highest and his most hottest. So it's like, why wasn't she in this doc? I get it. Yes, they divorced and things like that. But like... Y'all could have talked about how, yeah, you know, we went through a tough patch, but now we're good, we're friends, blah, blah, blah. Y'all could have added all that in there. Like, there was just, I don't know, they missed the mark for Hrithik's part in part 4, like, of the documentary. Like, I was so, like literally when it ended, I was like, that's it for Hrithik? Like, that's all y'all gave to him? I was so mad. I was so mad. But anyway, if I were to rate this documentary, I would give it a... I mean, I did learn a few things, I guess. Little things, but like I wasn't overly impressed. I'll give it like a C+. This documentary was like a cute C+, B-, if I'm going to be honest with you. Like, I feel like I can just go to watch as like a Simi Garwal interview of like the early 2000s, and I'll probably get more information out of that than I would get out of this documentary, because this was a puff piece. This was a puff piece. Like, the only thing I really learned out of this documentary was the fact that the last name got changed. The fact that Hrithik had a accident on the set of Krish. That the uncle had some plagiarism things. Like, that was it. Like, other than that, like, I wasn't really too impressed with this doc like that. So C+, B-. But anyway, who knows? Maybe some other people might feel differently about it. You guys tell me what you guys think in the comment section below. Please like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. Let's get up to 2,000 subscribers. Thank y'all so much. Let's get the watch time hours up. Okay, let's get, listen, 2025 is the year of manifestation. Let's get those hours up. Let's get the subscribers up. Please subscribe to the channel, comment, like, share my videos if you care, and I'll talk to you guys later. Bye.